Welcome, I'm Dan Sissons from Z-Man UK, and today we're on a windy, blustery Dorset coastline, showcasing a little bit of what Z-Man plastics and baits can do for wrasse fishing in particular. Very shallow rocky waters today. We're going to be using weedless rigs, trying to keep out of the kelp and the weed, and overall seeing what baits work effective, Texas rigs and so on, to try and explain a little bit about wrassing on the coastline. So let's take a look at some of the baits that Z-Man offer that suit this kind of fishing perfectly. The very first one that attracted my attention a few years ago was the ever reliable punch crawl, an old-fashioned crayfish imitation, affectionately known as creature baits to those of us that use them regularly. It could not be more of a wrasse bait if a wrasse designed it itself. Of course, the common thing with all the Z-Man baits is how tough they are, how elastic they can be. And for wrasse fishing, that just could not be any better. The bite, the hit, the take from a wrasse can often be very violent, and on certain plastics it will take crawls off, it will take bits of it out, and of course then that lure is no good and you're throwing it away. Whereas these, we can just keep on pulling, and you can use that one over and over and again and again and again. Z-Man hula stick, tremendous little wrasse bait. Almost a variation on the old TRDs that people will be familiar with. It's an old-fashioned tube in a sense. We've got a split or a frayed end just for that little bit of extra attraction, and of course that will often wander around as you're reeling it in. Now this will be your conventional old-fashioned Texas rig. We've got this one on a 1/0 weedless worm hook. We'll thread him up. Tied him up a bit, and there we go, and we're fishing. Lose the hook point. Now we can drag that through the weed, and it should stay out of trouble. We've got a free running cone weight. This instance I've got 7 or 8 grams, it's a windy day. But that can go as big or as small as you like. You could also fix that up higher if you wanted to, and that will slow down the action on that, on the retrieve. Which will then become a Carolina rig, for those of you that know. You may be able to see there just in top we've got a little bead in there. Now you don't need that bead. Some people use glass beads, there's a little bit of knocking, there's a little bit of attraction, and of course that's all fine. My main reasoning for that is it stops that cone lead falling over the top of the eye of the hook and then pushing the plastic down the shank. Okay? So these hula sticks are just as buoyant as all the rest of the Z-Man range. It's one of the main things to remember on these, that you will be able to get them to perform tricks that other lures just won't be able to. As you reel that in nice and slow, nice, without, not too erratic, kind of a nice steady retrieve on that, that will bounce and wander over the rocks and the kelp and the weed, and you'll let the sea and the waves and the action of the water do a lot of your work for you. The hula sticks, a great wrasse bait. It's a really blustery day today. I don't know if you can pick that up. Very windy, straight in our face, coming right towards us. So which means that we can't impart too much action on the lure because we've got a big bow of line hanging out, which means that you're not really in full touch and contact with the lure at all times. Now we could go over that by fishing really sort of upwards 10, 15, maybe even 20 grams. But the problem with that is that the heavier our jig head or the comb weight that we're losing, the more inclined it is to get stuck into the grooves and the cracks of the rocks, and you'll lose more gear. So the happy medium is I've got about an 8 gram comb weight on at the moment, and rather than put too much action into it, I'm just teasing it along. I'm just letting the wind create a bow of line, which is slowly dragging my lure from right to left, and then I'm just really just trying to keep in touch with it. And hopefully, somewhere along the line, we'll get a knock on the door. So in these conditions, it does make it tough. It's not the easiest thing to do, which is why we're fishing with a 20 gram rod today rather than a lighter, maybe 12 or even 15 gram rod that we might use on a calmer, still day. Lighter even again if the conditions are really calm. Our rod for today, we're lucky enough to be able to use new into the country, the new Tail Walk Northern Rock. 20 gram, an old-fashioned rockfish rod in the old style. Very Japanese in that sense, but a nice stiff, powerful blank. Now we've got a very blustery, windy day today, which means that finesse side of things is going to have to be kind of waylaid for the fact that we're going to need a tool that's going to A, cast our lure where we want it to cast, and B, being able to retrieve that lure through the rocks and through the weed without ever getting tangled up and snagged up every 5 minutes. The backbone of this rod is strong enough that you don't have to keep winching the lure out of snags and various things, that you just a nice slow retrieve, and the backbone of the rod will pop the lure out as it gets caught up most of the time. 7'6", ideal for off the rocks. You can go a little bit longer if you want to get a little bit more distance on your cast, or if you're fishing out and over ledges. But say, the Northern Rock, 7'6", 20 gram Wrasse rod. We look forward to trying it today. To match up the rod today, we've got a 2,500 Shimano reel with a 0.8 PE line on there, 10, 12 pound in the old school. It's a nicely balanced rig. You could go for a 3,000 side reel on there if you wanted to. We've just gone for a 2,500 today, just because it just seemed right at the time. Plenty of backbone in the reel is important, and a good drag setting is critical for any of this kind of fishing. You don't want to lose a fish around rocks and weed and kelp and stuff for the want of a poor drag on your reel. So a 2,500 size fixed spool reel should be more than adequate for most of your Wrasse fishing. If you're up to heavier lines, then you might want to go for a bigger size reel. So we're using a 0.8 PE line on there today, which is obviously a braided main line. Pretty much standard course these days for 99% of our lure fishing, be it whether it's light game, heavy game, or anything in between these days. The main reasoning for that is that it's a low diameter braid, which means we can use a lighter weight and still maintain a decent casting distance. Colour of line and stuff isn't really critical on a day like this, although obviously you could go down to the nth degree if you wanted to. But like I say, I would ordinarily use at minimum a 0.8 PE, maybe up to a 1 or a 1.2, depending on the conditions on the day and depending on what we're doing. The fishing we're doing today is mainly fairly shallow water, so we're not cranking through real nasty stuff. So I think we're going to have a move around the corner. We've been waiting a few hours for the tide to ebb away, so it enabled us to squeeze around. I'll clamber over the rocks and see if we can find some more exposed ground. It's a very shallow fishing here, so we're not fishing into big 15, 20 foot drop-offs or anything like that. It's very shallow, runs out for a long time. Don't let that put you off your Wrasse fishing. You don't need 20 foot of water for those Wrasse to be in. More often than not, I would bet a lot of money on that there's plenty of fish within casting distance of me right now. So they're very tight in at this time of year. We're in the autumn now, feels very autumnal today, and you'll be surprised how close, tight in those fish are and how shallow that water might be, even very big fish. Okay, so we've moved position, we've come around as the tide's ebbed, we've come out onto the ledge here, so we can get access to a little bit deeper water, and it's just a little bit more Wrasse, if that's such a thing. It just feels a little bit easier around here, a little bit easier to fish rather than in the real shallow stuff around the corner. So Chris has been around here for a little while now. He's had a few hits, so we're going to see if we can turn some of those hits into fish. Let's see what we can do. Here we go, Chris has saved the day here. Use a little bit of ingenuity, taking the TRD, pop to half an inch at the end there, just so we look closer to the edge. Bingo, straight away. Those little small bites that we get just turn into a fish. Z-Man minnows. They do a lot of swim baits, various different incarnations. The slim swims are big favourites of mine, but these minnows in the 3 inch, probably more of a Wrasse kind of size that we want. Now of course we spoke about it before, is that Z-Man lures are super tough, but of course that toughness is only any good if it's combined with suppleness of the plastic, and of course that's where Z-Man really is out there on its own. You see that one's on a TT on a lock head with a unique attribute that we can change the hook size on now. Nice and soft, and with that dorsal that the hook point sits in at the top, it keeps it nice and straight and fishing exactly how you want it to fish. The minnows. There we go. So there we go. We've got some fish feeding just in front of us there, and they're picking and picking and picking, and that's invariably what we're ending up with, is the lure all screwed up and so on. So we'll keep going through that for a while to see if we can pick some of those out. The swelling in the surf's going to push us off soon. It's a very windy day and there's a lot of swell running at the moment, so we're always watching behind us, as you always should do when you're fishing on the rocks. But we'll keep trying, see if we can pick one of these little fellas out. 20 yards. You've got dark water there coming from those rocks out, and then there's a gap, and then there's another patch of dark. I'm casting in between those two. There we go, about time, there we go. Whoa! About time, we had to cast a distance there. Long way out. This one's kind of had a run, and now it's kind of given up on me a little bit, but let's see if it... That really took off there, that was lovely. There he is. There we go, so that's the ever reliable TRD there. And it's a bass, I think. I think it's a little bass. How about that? So much for a Wrasse film. Funny that, the way it took off there at the front, I was almost tempted to say, this feels like a little bass. Okay, come on then. A lovely little bass, how about that? On the TRD, let's see if we can land him. Chrissy's getting the net for me. Can you get him, mate? No, he says. You got him. Well done. Thank you, mate. Let's see. We get bassed. Never have I been more pleased to not catch a wrasse. There we go, there's the TRD in the corner of the mouth, the ever reliable TRD. How about that? Wonderful, not a huge fish by any stretch of the imagination, but shallow water, and he took off like a steam train at the beginning there. Well, well, well. There we go, beautiful bar of silver. Tremendous. So, not a big fish. Okay, so while we have a little sit down and rest from all the walking and clambering over the rocks and goodness knows what else, I think it's just worth noting that this TRD, caught a few fish on it today, had countless hits on it, countless bangs. Just for those who want to know, that colour, green pumpkin and orange, it's a nice colour for this time of year. Seems to pick out the fish very well. The Elastec plastic that runs through all the Z-Man plastics means they're super durable. We know it's a point that's been emphasised over and over again, but it really is worth mentioning that there's not many plastics you can come and have a day on the rocks down here, get hit by a few fish, land a few, drag it through countless amounts, how many rocks and seaweed and goodness knows what else on the bottom, and it's still good to go. Just goes back in the packet and we can use it again. But a little side note, put it back in the packet from which it came from. They don't mix well with others. Another plastic that's just worth a quick mention are the scented shrimps. Now these ones are impregnated with the Procure Super Gel. Really what you're buying here is confidence in a packet. You've got the Elastec plastic, super tough, super stretchy, super buoyant, but equally it's got the Procure Gel added into it just to give you that extra little bit of confidence when that lure's down there, that it's giving off a bit of a scent. On a tough day when you're struggling to get a bite, this might just catch you that one fish to save you going home with a blank, and no one wants that. So again, the scented shrimps, and there's scented swimmers, and there's all kinds of different scented baits that Z-Man do, just built in. Not pleasant, but the fish seem to like. Well, as we pull out of another snag, it's probably about time we called it a day. We've cast a lot of plastics today. Myself, good friend Chris Wheeler. We've used all different kinds of patterns and all different kinds of ways. Sometimes a tough day is a tough day, and it's as simple as that. But we have caught. Chris landed a nice wrasse. We had a bonus bass. I know we've shown you a little bit of just how straightforward this fishing can be. Doesn't need to be complicated. Bag of Z-Man plastics, worm hooks, weedless, some cone leads, and you're out here and you're fishing. You can get amongst this beautiful coastline. You'll probably catch up a few more fish than we do today. We've had a lot of fun. We'll see you again.